Hello and welcome to Celebrating Excellence, a program that highlights St. Lucian achievement and creativity. The 2026 theme is Celebrating Excellence, honoring our legacy, shaping our tomorrow. In this episode, design consultant Giovani Omer speaks about the influence of Sir Derek Walcott and Roderick Walcott on the art and culture of St. Lucia and their continued relevance to the nation's cultural development.
My father, Apilo Dunstan, was a genius. Why? Because like Derek and many others before, they grew up in a time where they say St. Lucianism, that pride and nationalistic feeling, that nationalistic drive was more important than money. When there was the Black Power movement, they wanted recognition. He grew up in a time where he wanted his people to be recognized, their talent, their qualities. So Apilo was an amazing individual, and he and Derek grew up together. They were friends from since 7 years old. Could you imagine? They were like brothers. Roddy's brother, Roddy always, would say that, oh, Dunstan is your brother, and not. They always had these squabbles. But they became close later on in life through Carnival, which is strange, Roddy and my dad. But my dad's connection with Derek and my dad, they were almost like twins. They decided they're going to, under the mentorship of their old teacher, and they decided they're going to fight that battle and bring St. Lucia into the limelight and carry whoever they can in the process. And that was a proud thing. I remember when my dad, Derek, the late George Odlum, and Jakes, they were at home in the CDC once, and Arthur Lewis came to see my dad, and Arthur Lewis was saying to them that you all are the ones that are going to make St. Lucia seen on the world stage. What I've done is just what I had to do, but you all are the ones that are going to make them see St. Lucia. So that was a powerful time for me growing up as a kid, listening to these giants, you know what I mean? It was very special. You're asking an individual who grew up around these people. A lot of individuals, when Derek became famous for his Nobel Prize 82, they clamored and got close to Derek. Everybody, now it is already, when somebody gets famous, everybody wants to, from politicians to individuals in society. But I grew up in that environment. These guys were always home. These individuals were always home. When I first met Derek, it must have been about 5-6 years old. And Derek would come by my dad, they would sit there, talk about the state of the arts, talk about politics, because, these guys were friends with George and all these guys, George was an actor too. So the thing is that when they started this mission, as far as I'm concerned, Derek led the charge. He said, Appy, I'll have to leave home to do what has to be done, because home will not appreciate what has to be done. And the thing strangely about West Indian people, about St. Lucians, you have to go out there and make a name for yourself, and then come back, and then people will start to listen, But he was already doing well with his plays and service writings. But that Nobel Prize brought honor and that pride that he wanted, but he lamented one thing. The thing is that the community that more or less benefited from Derek's power, Derek's achievement, were more the literary, theater arts people. The other artisans, the craftsmen and the fine artists and so forth, they saw him as a pariah, which is strange. It's like as if, so what? Which is sad. So when Derek came back, Derek met with the usual, the high class, But whenever he came home, he would tell my dad, we need to go out into the community. We need to talk to these people. We need to make them see that I'm not out there representing, I am part of you all, I'm one of you all. So they would meet with a lot of these guys. And that is when the other artisans in St. Lucia started to see and respect what he achieved. So what Derek was trying to achieve was not personal recognition. He was trying to take St. Lucia somewhere new. He was trying to make the world recognize our talent and how great we are as a people. You understand? And he wanted St. Lucians to look, let's go, don't piggyback on me. I want to show you that little boy from Chaussee. It's all of you. All of us are like this. All of us need to have that pride and that drive to do what has to be done for St. Lucia to be recognized and for it to be noticed on the world stage. And his influence really started later on, which is strange, because initially it was the politicians and the higher-ups in society and the people involved in the theater arts and the writers. But the rest of the community didn't feel like they were part of this. They felt like he's not one of us. And then he and my dad and the others, people like Robert Lee and Kendall, they made people realize, a lot of individuals, not him, the other actors involved, made the rest of the community realize his influence and what he has done. You understand? So we piggyback on what he has done, and then the world is looking at us now, looking to see who comes next, what comes next out of St. Lucia. And this is what he has lamented. He thought that up to 2 years before Derek passed, Derek thought that the same thing that was said in 82, 83, you came home, you're a hero because of what you achieved, but what you wanted to achieve, the Rat Island Foundation, to see a theater arts program in St. Lucia, to see the cultural center develop into a place where there's theater, a national museum, a national gallery. These are the things he wanted to see happen, never came to pass, because the politicians and the people, the powers that be, focused on the notoriety of what he had. But this is not what he wanted. He wanted to use it to carry us to that next level, to influence people, to let's do something better. Yeah, let's make St. Lucian, let's make the kids see that they could grow into that. And it hasn't happened. So 2 years before, he had that conversation. We were up by him, and he and my dad and I think it was Gandalf or one of these guys, they were there and they were talking about it. And he had that other Nobel Prize winner that he always visited him. And they were talking about, what's the sense? What's the sense in this great achievement if something doesn't emerge from there? So up to his last few months, he was lamenting that. But he was a great influence on the literary community and playwrights and so forth. But the others, they eventually came along when they met him. Because you see, the idea is they wanted to see why. And when Derek started speaking to some of these people, they realized that he was more grounded than them. You know what I mean? So they were like partners. They were like, wow, I could deal with that. I could relate to him. So he was no longer a pariah. He was one of them. And then by that time, 20 years on, promises were made, and we still don't have a National Cultural Center. We still don't have a National Museum. We still don't have a National Gallery. Rat Island Foundation is nowhere. So he felt betrayed. So he has had a great influence on the literary arts, on St. Lucia's recognition outside. But me growing up, knowing, meeting Derek, Roddy actually is the one I was closer to. I saw Derek all the time, he was with my dad. But Roddy is the one, that's what influenced me in Carnival. My father brought me to a Turks mass camp, that's Roddy's people. And That's why I fell in love with Carnival. I was like 5, 6 years old. And it brought me to Roddy's mass camp. And you'd be surprised the individuals are there. Derek was never involved in this kind of thing. But Derek and Roddy would be home. But this is why I started to recognize what theater, the love for theater, that love for making costumes, making things come to life. That's where Roddy came in. So there'd be collaborations. But the reality is that the influence, actually the direct influence on the arts in St. Lucia, what he wanted never happened up to this day. It has not happened. I'm not saying that he's not responsible. They're not responsible. The powers that be are, and we could do better. You know what I mean? So I'm very proud of my association with Derek. He was troublesome, but he was very powerful. He was a genius. And my father loved him. They really, when these two would meet, they would talk about that passion for St. Lucia. I've not seen much of that. And this generation have no idea what they missed. I wish a lot of them who study him and study his work actually met the individual. They would be more passionate. They would love this country more. We're too heavily influenced by the outside. And Derek's legacy, it's up to us, the artists that are still passionate, to keep that flame going. And I intend to, and I know a lot of others are, from Adrian Auger, Robert Lee, McDonald Dixon, a lot of individuals who are old school, but they want to see something happen. They're still there. And we're going to keep his legacy going. And my dad especially told me that St. Lucia doesn't forget what this man, who he was, or what he wanted to do, what he tried to achieve for us. And maybe one of these days we'll be proud to see that it happened, you know? So it's up to us now to heavily influence this new generation and get them to be as passionate as these guys were before.
Thank you to our sponsors, the Government of St. Lucia, the Cultural Development Foundation, the Bank of St. Lucia, Labrie Cooperative Credit Union, Flow, Sagicor, and DD Media Relations. We are thrilled to share that the Nobel Laureate Festival continues to grow each year, welcoming many visitors, St. Lucians, and their friends who return home to celebrate with pride. For all the information you need, visit the festival Facebook page. Don't forget to request your program of events. Goodbye.